Hi, all of you wonderful scuba divers out there. Welcome to the Scuba Diving Magazine podcast, where I break down the latest scuba diving news and things that have just piqued my personal interest over the previous week. Not a lot of news this week. It's been fairly quiet. However, one of the greatest characters in British scuba diving has sadly passed away, so I'm going to talk a little bit about him. There's also been an inquest into the death of a snorkeler who was using a full-face snorkel mask, and a woman in Texas survived inside of her submerged car. So let's jump straight into the first news story. So this is the sad news that Mark Milburn has passed away. So the UK diving fraternity is mourning the loss of legendary Cornish skipper Mark Milburn, who tragically died on the 6th of April from a bleed on the brain. Through Atlantic Scuba and Stingray charters, Mark had introduced thousands of divers to the wonders lying in the waters around the Cornish coastline, and his enthusiasm for his local scuba diving was just amazing. He was in full flow all weekend at the recent Go Diving show. I met him up there, and one of those characters that always had a smile on his face. Always happy, always very easy to talk to, and always had like scuba diving on the mind. So he was a great spokesperson and just general character to get people into scuba diving. Tragic news. Obviously, our condolences to family and friends. It's always sad when you see a name sort of pop up, and then you read that they tragically died. The next news story is that a coroner has warned many millions of people could be at risk from full-face snorkel masks after a British holidaymaker who was taking HRT medicine died whilst using one. So this was Angela Cairn, who was 63, and she collapsed and died in the Red Sea whilst using a decathlon full-face snorkel mask. And an inquest in Surrey found that she suffered emergent pulmonary edema, which is just a build-up of fluid in the lungs, and the full-face snorkel mask likely contributed by increasing the negative pressure, and it kind of draws fluid from your body into your lungs. I did a whole video on it breaking down, I think it was a Dan associated study on full-face snorkel masks. So head over to the YouTube channel. There's plenty of videos about it. But one of the things with this is that Ms. Kern had been diagnosed with high blood pressure and was taking hormone replacement therapy to relieve symptoms of menopause. Unbeknownst to her, this made her vulnerable to problems when using a full-face snorkel mask, something that was not made clear in the packaging. Now, what was interesting, so I was reading this on the Telegraph news article, but if you actually find the coroner's report, they go into a little greater detail in that she had bought the snorkel about 5 years beforehand, and since then the packaging and the the like user manual and user notes and whatnot have changed a couple of times at least to include, if you also have cardiorespiratory issues, you shouldn't be using these masks, and do this, that, or don't do that. So there's a chance that because you bought it so long ago, didn't have the most up-to-date like regulations and suggestions. So the coroner really did sort of in her report, and did send a report to the owners of Decathlon and just the general public as such, in that if you are using full-face snorkel masks, do be aware, and also sort of think about how like changing physiological conditions can have effect on breathing and your overall sort of health as such. And the medical report concluded, we strongly recommend to advise against wearing Easy Breath masks to people who suffer from underlying cardiorespiratory conditions, but also apparently Decathlon's instructions for the mask now warn against use of the user has unstable cardiorespiratory pathologies and say that it has to be used under conditions of submaximal exercise, which is mid to moderate exertion, and that it is not suitable for active swimming. So, yeah, we've been saying this for years about full face snorkel masks. You do have to be very, very careful with them. And yeah, even if you bought one years and years ago, it's best to check up on like the current recommendations. And one of the big things that did come out of the that full face snorkel study that I did a video on a few months back is that when it's from big named brands, there is a certain amount of accountability, but when it's one of these, just either it doesn't have a brand name, it is just a full face snorkel mask, then yeah, there's no accountability. There's very little, if any, quality control testing in the breathing routes and all that kind of stuff, the airflow. So yeah, just be incredibly careful if you do choose to use a full face snorkel mask, and yeah, it is best that you do actually read that little manual. And if you do have any kind of health condition, it's best that you consider that first, and maybe go for a half mask, a traditional like snorkeling half mask, and a separate snorkel instead of a full face snorkel mask. Links to all of these, I'm going to pop them down in the description below. Hopefully, I can find that the actual coroner's report. I'll pop a link down in the description as well, so you can read through that. And the final news story that caught my interest is a woman who had been reported missing since the 5th of April was basically discovered by on the 7th of April by a local fisherman who spotted a black Jeep almost completely underwater. You can just see the kind of the top of the cabin, and this is of course around Good Friday, so a lot of people are saying it's a Good Friday miracle. But in what authorities are regarding as a miracle, a Texas woman was found alive in a vehicle that was discovered submerged in a lake 2 days after she was reported missing. So the woman had reported missing on the 5th of April, and the police department of Longview in Texas have obviously been looking for her. But on the 7th of April, the a local fisherman spotted the top of this black Jeep almost completely submerged, and called local authorities. Figured that someone had crashed their car into the lake. And a Marion County Sheriff's Office statement says he reported observing a black Jeep submerged about 40 feet from the Woody's Camp boat ramp. And it's not completely unusual, especially if it's near a boat ramp, for someone trying to back their boat in, and they don't do it quite right, and the car keeps going and ends up in the water. But local authorities arrived to the scene with the whole recovery crew and everything to like winch it out. As they're pulling the Jeep out, authorities noticed that someone was inside and moving about. And with assistance from the wrecker service, fishermen, and Marion County deputies, a female was safely rescued from the submerged Jeep. Authorities later determined that the woman found in the Jeep was the same missing woman, and she was then taken to hospital to make sure that she was okay. And that's kind of the end of the story. But just bonkers. We don't really know what her condition, how she ended up in the water, or why she stayed in the water. But yeah, I can't imagine it would have been that warm, if especially if there was water in the cabin, because cars aren't completely waterproof, especially when they're submerged. So water must have been coming in, and then she just stayed in the car for some reason. She'd obviously been able to breathe. There's a good almost a foot of breathing air. But yeah, why wouldn't you I don't know, break a window or something? At least try to break a window. I get that opening the car door can be hard, and if you've got electric windows, then the electricity shorts out and you can't wind the window down like you could on old-fashioned cars. I don't know if this particular Jeep had a sunroof, but yeah, there's so many questions here, and the article has so few answers. Yeah, it's just one of those weird stories in that they're like, oh, okay, it's just we're recovering a car, let's just hook it up, winch it out, and then someone's like, there's actually someone moving around inside. No one had the thought to actually, peek through the window to see if there was anyone inside. But hey, yeah, it's just another interesting story that piqued my interest, and that really was about it. I've been trawling around. Usually some things just sort of pop up in my feed, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that would be a good story to chat about. But very very quiet this week. I don't know whether it is the like Easter holidays, everyone's just been relaxing or something. Whether like manufacturers are waiting for the rebreather forum, which is next week, and they're not announcing any new equipment or anything, because I haven't seen any new or particularly exciting things pop up on any websites or any social media. So it's just kind of stuff. The only other thing in my mind is that Subgravity, they did a thing on they called it the WOW, which is weight on webbing. It's like a plate. They've existed before. I can't remember who first. I know Highland do one, and I think there's another one. I want to say Blood on Water, or I remember the logo is like a drop of water. But anyway, it's basically a Delrin or a plastic like flat plate, and it's got these little spikes on the plate, and it sits on one side of 2-inch nylon webbing, and then either side of the plate it has two bungee loops. And what it is, it basically allows you to attach a lead block almost anywhere on that 2-inch webbing really quickly. So you thread those two bungee loops through the block and then hook it over itself, and it's just a really quick, secure way of just attaching a piece of lead wherever you need to. So if you're adjusting your trim, and yeah, it just makes it a lot quicker and a lot easier. And yeah, Subgravity sort of announced this their version, which is the same thing but with a Subgravity logo on it. But that's really it. It has been a very generic week, nothing overly exciting. I've been working on a wetsuit buyer's guide, just little things to help you. One, make sure that you're getting the right wetsuit for scuba diving, like temperature ranges and different types of neoprene and the linings and stuff, as well as when you do find one that does fit, how do you know that it fits? Because it's very different to any other suit. When you put on a wetsuit, does it fit? It feels kind of snug, but how snug is too snug? So yeah, I'm just editing that after this. Otherwise, had a very interesting Ask Mark question, and it was a mystery. And I think I kind of came up with an answer. It's always tricky when someone says, well, this happened to me. What do you think the cause was? And basically what it was is that they'd gone on a dive and everything was fine. They'd come back and they'd sort of put their cylinder away, got a fresh cylinder, they'd had lunch, they'd been to the bathroom, they had their surface interval, but then on the second dive, they were so underweighted that they had to add an extra 2 kilograms of lead to actually get down, and they were trying to work out why their buoyancy had shifted so much. Their buddy was fine, and we were just kind of going through potential causes. They said they'd spoken to their dive center. The dive center, or like people, sort of said, well, it could be that, what was it, like water in your BCD, which I don't really get how that would affect your buoyancy. So I've kind of written that one off. An air pocket trapped inside of your wetsuit because they were diving in a semi-dry. So that's relatively that could be a cause, because trapped air inside of your BCD bladder or inside of your wetsuit, when it's a semi-dries are more efficient at keeping you dry, but they do eventually let water in. So there is a chance that they did have an air pocket just trapped inside, and that would make you more buoyant. So that's a potential, or at least a contributing factor, maybe. They did say that they didn't get a refill, they did get a different cylinder, but they were still 15 litre. Started with a 15, second dive was on a 15. But they don't specify whether they were both steel, they were both aluminium, they were both the same like brand. So if you went from a not stainless steel, sorry, I suppose they are stainless, they're just coated, a steel like Faber cylinder, and then the second cylinder was an aluminium 15, if they do make 15 litre cylinders, then your buoyancy is really going to change. Or I'm trying to think of the word. The usual culprit is, I dive with the same integrated weight pouches as my buddy, and they look the same, but they contain a different amount of lead. So I just grabbed the ones that looked like mine, put them in, and had too few blocks of lead. However, the buddy would have sunk perfectly fine. They may not have noticed that they just added a few extra puffs of air to adjust for the additional lead. I'm thinking it's more trapped air, and maybe the cylinder itself was just a different size. It might have had the same internal volume, but it just might have been a bit more buoyant compared to the previous version. It was one of those tricky, you had to be there kind of situations, as a lot of them are. You used to get it all the time. Someone would come back after a dive and it's like, I saw this amazing fish. And you're like, okay, do you know what it was? And it's like, well, describe it to me. It was fish shaped. Like, great, this is starting off well. What colour was it? It was blue. Like, great. A lot of these stories, it's like, well, if I was there, it would have been a lot easier to diagnose it. From what information I do have, I imagine it's going to be this. But hey, who knows? Otherwise, what have I been up to? Yeah, someone was asking why scuba diving wetsuits are always black. And from my perspective, it comes down to black wetsuits sell. I am biased towards the retail side of things because I've spent the past 10 or so years specifically selling dive equipment, and whenever manufacturers bring out colourful wetsuits, they sell, but it's tricky when you adjust the aesthetics of something and it doesn't match what the customer wants. So, okay, great, you can bring out a blue wetsuit, that's wonderful, but it's the wrong shade of blue. Actually, my mask and fins are more of a azure colour, whereas this is more of a royal blue. It does make it very tricky, whereas if it's black goes with everything. And it's just very easy, and it doesn't discolour. It's a pretty good, long-term colour, and it goes with every colour. If you scuff it against something, it doesn't look grubby after a few seasons. So I imagine that's why most of them are. There are some brands that do come out with things. Aqualung, Fourth Elements, they have some really bright, colourful designs, but of course they always play it safe, and they do a black version or a grey version to bolster the range, as it were, because it's a huge investment to create these patterns and make up these wetsuits in all of the different sizes, and then have enough to send to all of the distributors around the world. So yeah, it's a huge investment for the manufacturers, and then a pretty scary investment for the dive center to spend a lot of money when dive centers don't have that much money to throw around, to invest in these like really out there designs that they might sell, or you know what, here's a black and grey version that you'll definitely be able to sell. So yeah, I think that's why most scuba diving wetsuits are black nowadays. It just makes a bit more sense. Otherwise, we uploaded a 42 minute long video on Ross Kemp, because they're really ramping up the like media marketing for the upcoming shipwreck adventure TV show. I spoke to him at the Go Diving show, and yeah, we got some exclusive footage. It's only for channel members, unfortunately, so you do have to be a paid member. But yeah, that's available for you to watch. Yeah, otherwise, next week we'll hopefully have something interesting from the Rebreather forum, number 4. This is the 4th one since, I think it was 1994, which was the very first Rebreather forum. But yeah, they're really doing a lot of marketing on that, and it's a good, fairly long show in Malta. So yeah, hopefully we'll have some interesting information or just some news coming out of Rebreather forum next week. But yeah, that's it. Remember to like, share, subscribe, do all that good social media stuff if you haven't already. Check out the website scubadivermag.com, where we update you with the latest news and like travel events as well as equipment. But yeah, that's it for another week. Thank you very much for listening, everybody, and of course, safe diving.